a journalist in New York. He wanted to go and write about Rikers Island,
Oh, yeah.
and the governor wouldn't let him in. So he applied for a job, got assigned as an officer, and he's getting all this stuff, writing all this stuff down. But within 6 months of working in this hostile, dangerous, negative environment, he started taking that energy home, and he was abusive to his wife and kids.
Stanford prison experiment. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
Right. Stanford prison experiment. For the people who don't know about that, young psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever, early 70s, behavioural experiment. Asked for volunteers, split them into two groups. One of them, he says, you're going to be prison guards because it was in America. The other, you're going to be prisoners. Had the prisoners arrested properly, didn't they? Strip search, spray with DDT or whatever they did. And they set up a prison environment. In a very short time, it became very hostile. The guards became cruel. And the outcome was that if you put good people in a bad place, they will become bad. What I will say is, lots of negatives about prison. Strange ways, 1,200 prisoners don't want to be there, and a lot of staff don't want to be there. There was some absolute horrible bastards there. I'm talking about staff now, but far outweighed by lots of lovely, hard-working people. Some of them not qualified. There's some of them not qualified. I mentioned one lad in the book who looks like, he looks like one of these Russian dolls. Short, fat belly, no interpersonal skills, no presence, no nothing, but a massive heart. And ridiculed by staff for years, but sticks at it. So, you've got to take that from it. It'd be so easy to focus on the non-negative, but there were lots of really, really lovely, hard-working people.
On the opposite of that, then, I don't know if you would even be prepared to answer this question. Would you be allowed to say what's the worst thing you ever saw an officer do?
Right, I will tell you now, Shaun, quite definitely. The bad people, they pick their moments and pick their audience. It is very cliche that, but they do. There is people, there's a lot of officers, what I call chameleon officers. So you'll get a couple of officers, if they work with me and some of my mates on healthcare, they'd be great, they'd mix in. If they went and worked somewhere else with someone who was treated prisoners like shit, and you do get people like that, they would take on that persona. There's a lot of people in there who are incredibly stressed all their prison careers because they can't be themselves. Me, I really had to fight the first couple of years to keep my personality and be who I was. Do you know what I mean? It is very difficult. The worst thing I've seen, there's probably lots of things, nothing far too extreme, although I remember one lad, one of the first things I saw, we were restraining a prisoner. He was extremely tough, and it was a very violent restraint, and we were my mate Lowy. He's a lad I worked with at Forest Bank and Strange Ways. Not a brave lad, he wouldn't like that, but as a prison officer, totally dedicated. He's a fantastic guy. And we'd restrained this prisoner. We got him under restraint, so that's game over, yeah? He's on the floor, and a security member of staff came in and jumped off a bunk bed into the middle of his back. My mate was up in seconds, got him bit throat, ragged him up against wall, literally picked him up. You ever fucking do that in front of me again? There was one lad, again, I didn't see it. There is bad things, so I'm not going to shy away from that. Again, Lowy, I worked with him in the segregation unit at Forest Bank, so we come in one weekend. One Monday morning, there's a lad who had been in the special cell. He was an arsonist, small lad, not physically threatening in any way. He was mithersome, extremely mithersome, forever on his cell bell. Tried to get him to come out of his cell for a shower, won't come out of his cell, very withdrawn, in a corner, shaking. Anyway, we managed to get him, me and another member of staff, some coaxing into a shower. I had to fetch Lowy, covered from head to toe in bruises. He'd been battered. Nothing you can do about it. It does happen. Like I say, put good people in a bad place and some become bad.
The impression I'm getting from you is that you did your best under these, wicked circumstances at times. Your heart was in the right place. What would you say that stopped you from becoming cruel?
I was brought up. My nan used to say, speak and treat people I'd like to be spoke to and treat the same.
Yeah.
Very much so. That was instilled in me. That's what affected me. That I put myself through therapy because my head was fucked at one bit.
Yeah.
And the psychologist actually said to me, one of your biggest problems is you need to give yourself a break. You're far too tough on yourself. And it's also the system. The system, there's people who were my friends who I haven't fallen out with, who will never speak to me again because I've written that book. Because they believe, even though they're not bad person, I'm thinking of one specifically, I won't embarrass him and mention his name. He'll never speak to me again because even though he was a really good officer and not no darkness in him, no badness or whatever, he was a funny guy because he believes what happens in prison should stay in prison.
So they look at you as if it's a betrayal.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, a very small minority of people do, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Shaun, it was important if I was going to do a book that there's things in there that the publicist says to me, particularly at the end where I levered that prisoner, perhaps we don't need that in there, Sam. I don't want you to get in trouble. And I jokingly said, I says it does need to be in there because that's part of the story. That's my downfall. But I also said I'd do 6 months for the publicity, which never happened.